Hey, welcome back. Today on the CruZer build, we're going to go over the seat rails and how I'm going to make them adjustable. It's no mystery. They're out there using hinges. But this is going to be my take on what I did, what materials I used, and why I did it this way. So if you want to see about that, stick around. First of all, I think it's really nice that the Zenith company took the CruZer and changed the box and made it so that these two seat adjusters just bolt in with rubber grommets on both sides so that they're insulated from steel from the aluminum. And it's a nice setup. You just put the pan in and you've got full action. Later in the video, you'll see how much throw they really have. Well, because I had to mock them all up to make the decisions where to put these. But anyway, this setup I'm going to explain is not very good for being handy. My seat's going to be in a permanent spot when I get in and out, so it's going to be more like the old setup. So that I'm giving away. But the whole idea of taking the steel out of there and taking weight out when I can really appeals to me. But I had another reason that I really wanted to do that, because I would have to shim these up. Because I'm so short, I really want my head up higher. And the setup that I came up with just happened to give me another ½ inch. So that is really good. And the other really good thing I love about this is if anybody else ever buys this, all they have to do, unbolt my system and bolt the other ones in, and they're up and running. Now, the concerns that I have about these seats are strength. Will they do what they do? I do a little test in here. I'll show what I did for the Hinge to test it, and I'm pretty confident. I'm not going to test this to destruction, but I'm pretty confident in the design and the hinges being robust the way they are and what they have to do. This clip is just showing where we got the extruded metal from. That's from that wing spar, and we would hate for that angle iron or angle aluminum to go to waste. That's precious stuff. The bottom line is this kit comes with this adjustable seat rails, and the pre-existing holes I put it over and slid this all the way forward and like assembled it. So I know the front of the seat with this assembly goes all the way to here, and the range is all the way to there. Okay, so there's my seat range that I have to go with. Cutting out pieces of this. This is out of that main strut, so there's holes that are existing, but they're not going to bother me at all. I'll drill around them, hide them the best I can, but I want to use this stock. So the other thing is I assembled it and measured how high the seat would sit with that assembly underneath, and what it does, what I need is a little bit higher because I'm quite short. So I'm raising it ½ inch, probably need a whole inch. And the other thing I'm doing is figuring out how far. Of course, I can't explain it to you all at the beginning here because I don't know yet. I'm making my video as I do it, so you'll see the progression in here as it goes. So I might be explaining something a little wrong in the beginning, and it'll change as I go. So I want to use this for the 4 rails. This will be on the top, and this will be right and left for both. And I want to put that hinge material between them. And the problem I had with the hinge material was if I set these on here, I want something to handle the side load. I didn't want, the hinge would probably handle it just fine, but it also has a little bit of give to it. So to stop that from happening, right now I'm machining in this little rabbet, I guess you'd call it. In woodwork, it's a rabbet, but I put in a very tiny notch on both of them, and that's why I can't have them like this, because I can't figure out a way to cut the rabbet on the other side and run this through and take the material out of the inside edge. But I can run it through my router, both of them the same way, flat, and that isn't going to hurt a thing. I'm going to position this where this is, and this will be outside. Instead of directly under, it'll be 1 inch out where it's on the seat. The only problem is
it's going to give the seat more sway. Or I could do it this way, which I could do it this way and have this on there. But then when you look in, you'll see all these holes. So I'm still debating how I'm going to do that. But right now I'll show you how I'm getting the little 90-degree angles on here. Or not 90 degrees, but the little rabbet. The other thing I like about these is on this end, when I'm sitting on it, the hinge isn't taking any, if I rivet a hinge across there for the pin to pull it out, it isn't taking any of the weight of sitting. It is taking leaning back force when this pulls up. I have plenty of strength for leaning back pressure. That's the only real consideration I have yet of worry is that lifting force. Pushing down, these take care of it. I love the idea that I don't have to put the rubber grommets in. I can have it bolted up solid to the metal. And the other thing I'm thinking is putting a very small L angle underneath the seat pan just to keep it from wanting to flex down a little. But we'll see about that in the future. This is how I'm doing the channels. The bit kind of looks like this one. I don't know the name of it, but it's a one-sided cutting bit. And I don't want to move anything because I got several of them to do and I want them all identical. But I'll try to get a close-up of that and rotate it so you can see it. That's what it looks like. Holes here are not going to bother me in the least because these are super strong. So I'll use what I can, and what I can't, I'll drill in between. And we'll get that. This is the hinge I got. The reason I got this is just purely because of the size. I didn't want it any more than the two together. So when these are together, I'm going to have them compressed right tight together, and then I'm going to have the hinge pulled apart as far as I can when I drill the holes, because there is a little bit of play in there. There isn't enough play to come out of the groove. I just know that it's only going to get looser. It isn't going to get better. So I'm going to put it out at its most, these tight and this pulled apart. So that's a good place to start. Gear up because this is noisy. So that's going to interlock with the other one, as I was saying. And if you do it right in the center, then the hinge will lay just perfectly flat on it still. I'm going to probably run a little piece of sandpaper in there just to clean it up. Well, the next thing I decided to do was to fine-tune the machining marks out. The back side didn't chatter. It took that out really nice, but the bottom is a little bit of chatter. I've run this in there a few times, and that really seemed to help. And then put them together and just test them. And you can kind of hear it grind. So there's still little marks in here. I simply need it to, you know, for, like I said, for sideways support. Kind of like railroad tracks. They only support the one wheel one way, and the other one does it the other way. So that's exactly what's going on here. So you get to see the process as I'm thinking about it. I've thought of a million different ways to do this, like boxing it, putting it in there at an L angle, but I want the hinge kind of halfway in, but then that put that way over and it wasn't supporting the weight properly. This is going to work out just fine. They lock together so that there's no sideways sway. The only thing I'm worried about is rocking. If they were to not move right and left, but roll right and left. When you sit in the pan, if it wants to roll down a little, that will permit that because it's a hinge, and this doesn't stop that rolling. The good news is that the hinge is going to be on this side, so that when the seat pan does sink down in the center slightly and this tries to roll in, it'll actually take pressure off of the hinge. It'll start to close. This way it would be opening. So both of them are going to be set up that way, because this will be just the opposite. And yeah, I think that's good news. I really like that build design thing, because I couldn't have designed that in, or I could have maybe on paper if I was smart enough, but this is how I do it. A little at a time, think it through, try to come up with where the problems are going to lie and fix them as I go, because I can't think of everything at the very beginning. But that's the fun of working this out. I found that the normal riding in the seat with that center flexing a lot, and if this was moving, you can see that's not going to put any wear and tear on that hinge. Just made a quick bracket out of a piece of 2x4 and screwed a board on here so I could clamp these two together. And they're you know, those two little 90s are in there. And now I'm spacing them out and drilling them together. I think I'll leave these all shiny without painting them, so that I don't get paint in that groove, and then the pressure on it's going to pop it all off. And the hinge, when you're moving it back and forth, it's going to want to pop off the paint on the edges. So I'm just going to polish this up, or at least sand it flat and leave it that way. The other thing I decided to do was, in crucial areas, put a steel rivet instead of just the regular A5. And out at the ends, on the front end, out in the front is where all the pulling up is going to be, so that one's crucial. And then when it's adjusted way out to where I'm going to sit is going to be the other crucial spot. Well, I don't know if this is accurate because there aren't rivet holes in there, but it's clamped in the vise, it's clamped on there. It's only 2 tabs holding it, 2 lugs or 2 hinge lugs holding it. And I've got 200 and, what do I got right now? 240 pounds on it. And the only way that's going to experience any energy in the airplane is negative G's. Positive is going down against both of the rails, and negative is pulling up, or me pushing back on the back. And during positive G's, I don't think I'll be pushing back on the seat much. I'll be pushing down in the seat. So right now that's pretty cool. It's holding 240 pounds with just 2 lugs. And now I hate, this is gonna spring and kabang, but if it does break, but I'd like to bring it up to 300, that's for sure. Now what we did in bodywork is, if we thought a chain or a cable was going to break and we were doing framework, we'd lay a blanket or a towel over it to absorb the energy. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. There, now if that breaks, that'll poof into that and stop us from flying around the shop. It's a little scary. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. Sure is reassuring though. Okay, now we're at 299. I'm going to stop at 300. Okay, it stayed even clamped. I'm surprised it hasn't slid out of the clamp. This wasn't very scientific, but it just tells me that I don't think the rivets are going to be steel, so I don't have to worry about them. But if this thing at 100 pounds or so would have cracked that lug off from even twisting, it's twisting. But we're clearly on two lugs here. And it was starting to slide out at 300 pounds or over 300 pounds. So we're gonna leave that alone. What I wanted to know was if my pressure on my back, I weigh, let's say 200 pounds with fully dressed. Actually it's 180, but let's say 200 pounds fully dressed, and I banged against that back seat. Could I energy that up to 300? I don't think so. My back doesn't support that kind of pressure, but anyway, it makes me feel better that I tested it. Because if these would have popped off at 75 or 100 pounds or even at 200 pounds, I would have had to rethink everything. But they're very strong. A really good advertisement for vice grips. Of course, I just use what I've got, and I've got lots of vice grips. I've actually got rid of a lot of them. So when in my business, whenever I was working on cars, man, you wouldn't believe how many vice grips you'd use on a quarter panel. Kind of like Clecos, you know? You just got to get everything set just the way you want it so you can test lines. But that was a good test. I like that. If you didn't like that and you don't think that proves anything, leave a message down in the bottom. This bottom rail will probably stick out about an inch. Right about there. Because I don't ever see any problem with hitting that, so I want that as forward as I can. Deal both ends, and then I put one here at a crucial spot. And if that's moved back to there, that's still a pretty crucial spot. That's a lifting point. So that looks like 1, 2, inside of 3. Yeah, it's between that spot and the other spot is where it's going to sit. And no one knows until it gets all put back together. But that's the reason that I did the steel. Steel front and back, and one here in this position. This doesn't change where it's going to pull from. It's always going to pull from the front. So that's why I did that. And technically, a guy should probably have a little safety strap underneath here that can move forward and back with adjustments and be unclipped. But if something was to fail, it would keep the seat from going back too far. That's even something I'm thinking about. Fully fabricated and was happily moving on to the second one. And it wasn't a matter of measuring once and cutting twice kind of thing. It was, I got it mixed up in my mind when I was set this in my jig and I put the hinge on the wrong side. So instead of being inside, they're both going to be on the inside edges of the rails. It would have been on the outside, inside, and then on the outside of the inside, if that makes sense. And the only bad part is I can't match drill these now. I have to drill through my hinges into my new stock and start over. So I have 2 new ones already cut. I went and cried in my beer and went ahead and cut these, put that little L angle in them, and they're pretty much up and running. So I just got to finish sanding them, and then I've got to match drill these full size up. So that's going to be the bad part, but we'll see how it comes out. What a rookie mistake. Assuming you're right instead of double checking. Well, I got that done, so that's behind me finally. The only reason I put that in there is because that's really how you feel. You feel really bad that you did something that you just spent hours on, and you know you got to redo. But you know that's all part of building. So onward and upward. And I mean that. Get that behind me. But now I'm at that point where I'm scratching my head again. So now that I have these up, and I really like being able to put something together and look at it and be able to make a decision, because my big decision here, where's these wrenches? My big decision here is the rails that these are replacing distribute the weight right over the top of each other. They're not one side to the other. And they have the pre-drilled holes for the bolts. And if I stick them in the pre-drilled holes, then these brackets are out an inch further on both sides, which will enable the seat to bend in a little more.
I had to put my mic on. It was getting noisy with the furnace and all. But so I'm standing here looking at all this, and as I've told you in the past, the design is set up for the flex in the middle here. They have a little bit of arch built into it. That's kind of cool. But as you can see, with just the pressure of my hand, that goes up and down quite a bit. So my problem is, that I'm trying to work out, is if I bolt them where the pre-existing holes are in these cross members, then this is out further on this panel than the way they figured it. It's out here, so it's going to spring in a little more. So the logical thing is to move these in so that this rail will be above the match drilled holes. And my only problem with that is, once I drill a hole and put these bolts in and move these in just that little bit, what do I do with the old hole? It's an A5 size hole. And I don't know if I can just leave that or not. So, but right now, what I have to do is come up with a solution of I can live with. Maybe leaving the hole wide open. Well, I made up my mind while I was inside looking at some stuff. It has to be moved in because of the seat rail. These are very strong. They can take it. That is the weak link in the setup. So I've already up drilled this one and put a bolt in there. I just have to parallel it to where the old one was, make sure it's perfect, and then this has to be parallel perfect because, you know, getting the hinge if you move it back some to fit again. I'm going to put that bolt in with some washers quite snug, and I've got a 1/4 inch. So that worked out just fine. Well, it's not quite a gimme. It's more like a 6-footer, and as you can see, I've got it clamped, and that one's drawn and right on 32, and there's the center, and that's clamped in. So if I take my time and drill, it should be right. And everything stayed pretty good. Oh, man, those suckers pinch you. Everything stayed really tight. It vibrated a little, but now when I line it up, it's still on the line. Guess that's what those tools are for. Lovely. Now, the key is to, while that's in, you still got to do that one parallel to this one. Well, I have this one all put in and bolted down, and I have the front of this one the distance I want, forward and sideways. I like just using a piece of wood to make these parallel instead of using a measurement, because I could be off a little bit. Well, that measured out perfectly parallel, and now I've just got to find center. I won't bore you with putting nuts and bolts in these, and I'm just going to have a 1/4 inch overlap. If I need to ever shorten that top up, easy enough to pull a pin and go over there to the bandsaw and do that. So it's really nice to get off of, like, the next step was to start taking this thing apart and start denibbing everything and getting it primer and stuff and figuring out how I'm going to paint it, and a little change of plans. I plan on painting it all as one now. I'm not going to leave all those. I'm going to prime the whole thing and put it together, and then I'm going to paint the interior of it. It'll be less material, less time, and I won't have to worry about scratching it so much when I'm riveting. And I do like that. I think I like that rivet look on some things, but I don't think I'm going to like it on the whole interior. So a little change of plans there. Uh, yeah, I'm going to bolt this up, and I'm super, super happy with it. It was actually fun. I liked building those brackets, and the good news is if I want to change this out, it's just 4 bolts and back to factory settings. So, hey, thanks for coming along on this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope we showed you something you needed to know. That would be nice. And I'll see you in the next one.